All right, Fresh. Let's go to Rocky Top, Georgia. 3 game stretch we talked about. Missouri W there. Old Miss blowout win there. Georgia now going on the road. We're waiting to see. We have not gotten the rankings out yet. Is we talked about in our recap last week. If you have Tennessee right at 25, I'm nervous the committee is going to drop Tennessee completely out of the top 25 after getting boat raced by Missouri. It's not really going to matter. Georgia's eyes has to be to win the SEC title game. They win that, they're into the playoff regardless, one way or another. But it's so interesting. Like I had people talk to me about Tennessee. Folks, stop calling for Josh Heupel's job. I heard some people go, "Oh, Josh Heupel is going to be on the hot seat." Folks, you're one. Do do would you like me to bring back Butch Jones? Would you like me to bring back Lane Kiffin for how you guys played with him? Uh, You have a really good football coach, a guy who really cares about Tennessee, and I think that you just need to give him a little bit of time. Fresh and I had a lot of questions going into the year about Joe Milton. Nico is a true freshman. He's not ready for the SEC, but I think year 2 is going to be more important for Tennessee next year. I'm going to kind of wait and hold off before I get the torches and pitchforks ready. But I'm also a Josh Heupel apologist, so I get it here. Fresh, Georgia coming off a huge win over Ole Miss. Brock Bowers is back, but the only thing is Georgia plays a little bit different on the road than they do at home. I know they have everything in front of them. Is there a possibility of a letdown game in this one?
I mean, I think the team is focused and they have you have an idea of what you want to accomplish. But we've always played tougher at home. This is going to be the toughest road environment for Carson Beck. Auburn was one thing at 3:30. People in Neyland, the Vols, I think they have a hatred for Georgia. Um, that if you let them hang around, it could get a little more hostile in the second half. You have to go in and you have to take advantage and get after them early. You cannot give the Vols any life in the first half. Um, the Vols' last loss at home was to Georgia in 2021. So it's been almost actually November 13th, 2021. I think this is recording on November 13th, 2023. So 2 years to the day of record was the last time they lost at home. That's for the success they've had, but now they have a returning evil coming back up there, and they have to try to survive and get some revenge. Um, their talent is not what they had in 2022. The quarterback, I think Jalen Wright's, he's the only bright spot of that offense, that running game. Their offensive line is not what it was. Their receiving talent is not what it was. Their defense has been better, but this is a team that was living off of the laurels last year, but they are still lethal because they are playing desperate football at Tennessee right now. They have nothing to lose. Either they have a loss, and that's 4 losses for the year, or they pull off the biggest upset and completely just shatter Georgia's dreams. Because honestly, I'm going to say this right now. The way it is right here on November 13th with Oregon and Washington and Texas and Alabama set up, if Georgia lost to a unranked Tennessee football team, even if they won the SEC, there would be a lot of doubt. So people might want to put them in the playoff. Could they probably still get in as the 4 seed after beating Alabama? It puts your situation, you no longer control your own destiny. And that's where Tennessee has a chance to conjure up some evil spirits there in Rocky Top. And if they pull off an upset, it gives them incentive to run. That's why you cannot give the Vols any life. You have to get after them early, get the crowd out of there, take down, get the crowd's exits by halftime and beat them down. If you let them hang around, the crowd noise gets there, crazy things happen in the second half. You never know. Football is football, sports are sports. You might have superior talent, but there are times where it might not always come to play, and some other team plays with momentum and gets an upset. I will say a couple of years ago, Oregon was looking like they were going to be in the playoff. They went to Arizona State, and a freshman quarterback named Jalen Daniels led the Sun Devils to a big upset over the Oregon Ducks and knocked the Ducks out of the playoff, potentially contention. So, crazy things happen. We've seen it all over the place. There was even a year where West Virginia was supposed to go to the BCS, and Pitt took them out in a rivalry game. Things happen. You've got to play football You've got to execute on every single play. You cannot let other teams stay around. If you are the superior football team in terms of roster depth and record, you have to come out there and play like it. You cannot give any inch or any momentum to the opposition to let them even think they are in the football game. You've gone the last 3 times the Dogs have gone to Knoxville, they've scored at least 41. In the last 5 trips, they've scored at least 31. So they've been putting points up on the balls every single time they're there. You have to keep that going this week. Offensively, you've been playing great the past few weeks. Offensive line's been there. Receivers been catching the football. Bowers is back healthy. Running game's been strong. They have to make sure they keep attacking. The defense is not as dominant as was the past 2 years, but they're still very, very good. They're still a top 10 defense in the nation. If they can just keep developing there and shut down Tennessee, if you start giving up some early touchdowns, give them some momentum, it keeps them in the ball game and it gives them some sort of hope. The Vols have run the ball a lot, and that also helps them in this football game. They're averaging 213, which is second in the SEC, and they have the 4th best overall offense at 454 in the SEC. So they're obviously below the Dogs in the overall offense perspective, but they have a great running game, and that's helped provide them some balance. And that helps kill the clock, helps the rest of the defense. If they get the ground game going, they have to keep the same kind of philosophy that Ole Miss had, even though at least they came into the game with that. Ole Miss was going to come in and try to run the football. That didn't turn out too well because they got put down early, and they were never allowed to use the running game to keep them going. If you get after the opponent early and you shut the running game down, they have to start throwing the ball a lot in the comeback situation, and that's where that offensive game plan goes away. Dogs have to make sure they come out and physically own the line of scrimmage and shut down the Tennessee run game and force Milton to throw. If you force Milton to throw and make him make decisions, that's where he can start losing his focus. You cannot give him that play action ability or be able to get on the edge and throw. The Vols also, even though Georgia's only given 9 sacks in the season, if they are put in a position to have to make a comeback or getting late, Tennessee has 33 sacks on the season, led by James Pierce, who has 8. You've got to dictate the offense. You've got to dictate the line of scrimmage, keep the down and distance, use the play action. That limits that pass rush from Tennessee. If you have to get put in obvious passing situations or your crowd noise potentially gets to you, whatever might happen, if there's a crowd still around the football game or early in the ball game, that's where that pass rush for Tennessee starts becoming a factor. You've got to be able to dictate the line of scrimmage and run the football. In Tennessee's 3 losses, the opponent's starting running back has run rampant all over the Volunteer defense. Etienne ran for 172, McClellan ran for 115, and Schrader last week ran for 200. Obviously, all 3 of those games were on the road, but they were able to take the life out of Tennessee offense, and they were able to physically destroy them at the line of scrimmage. And that's what, at the end of the football game, Tennessee quit. In all 3 of those games, Tennessee quit. What happened last year? Tennessee quit. What happened 2 years ago up in Knoxville? Tennessee quit. You've got to run the football down their throat, build out the play action. Do not give them any hope. Because if Tennessee gets hope, they have playmakers. They can hit a deep, 60-yard touchdown here and there and keep them in the ball game or pull off an upset. You can't let the craziness happen. You've got to come in and handle your business for Georgia. If you're Tennessee, you have to play open. You have to play loose. You have to play, just no holds bar. Let it happen. You cannot in terms of penalties. You cannot be going reckless by personal fouls and all other nonsense. Play within yourself. Go out there and throw for touchdowns if you have to. Because if you don't do it early, Georgia will wear you down and they will run you out of the building. Your fans will leave. You cannot lose your home field advantage early. If you do, it's just going to become a steamroller and it's going to keep beating you down. Josh Heupel, what kind of coaching adjustments can you make? You've coached now against Kirby Smart 2 years in a row, and you've gotten your offense completely the offense has been non-existent in the second half. Your defense has gotten rolled over. What adjustments are you able to make and be a true head coach? What is your staff actually put together to shut down Georgia? Because you're using your barometer as we've got to beat Georgia to get to Atlanta. Well, you're not going to Atlanta again, but you still haven't beat Georgia either. Have you ever a chance to get it done at home? What adjustments have you making offensively and defensively to take after and attack Mike Bobo's offense or Glenn Schulman's defense? Where do you adjust and make those in growth points from your coaching perspective? Because if not, you're just a gimmick offense that puts up points against nobodies, and then the games that matter, you struggle. Where are you going to make those changes? This could actually be a staple in your career. There's people not calling for his job. I don't think he should be fired, but there's definitely a point where you've got to start showing some growth in your own game too. In the end, I think the coaching for Georgia is better. They have a depth, and I think they see the focus of where they want to be, and they have a goal. They're going to come into a business like they're going to get done. I think Dogs win 37-17. Tennessee just is not the talent right now. Milton's not trusted enough at quarterback. Could Tennessee potentially win, pull off a crazy upset? They do have weapons that they could maybe something crazy could happen. But the momentum right now that Georgia's building, I think eventually they run the ball down their throat between Milton and Edwards and company, and they get it done and win 37-17. Dogs move on to Georgia Tech next week.
Fresh. I'm looking at this. And I need to make my case for Tennessee because when I looked at the game,
This wouldn't be our podcast if you didn't, Seth.
I know, but because everything is always going to be like the smart money is going to go on to Georgia. So, what in the world does Tennessee need to do to win this football game? The two things about Georgia that I started to notice, and you can see, like, you take a look at what happened in even though Ole Miss got boat raced early on for that, they still wound up having over almost 180 yards on the ground. Again, some things coming in garbage time and stuff like that. Missouri with Schrader was able to start to run the football, and then I went back to the Auburn game, and that's where I started to take a look at this. Again, Auburn in that football game, they were able to run the football for 219 yards on Georgia. If you're going to beat Georgia, Tennessee, it's going to start. It cannot go onto Joe Milton's shoulders. You're going to need Jalen Wright, Dylan Sampson, Jabari Small, Joe Milton, Cameron Sheldon. You're going to need every one of them to gain and kind of chip away with them and run the football and kind of play keep away with Georgia. You need to have your defense show up. You're going to need to put Georgia in third and long situations where put completely in Carson Beck and then, double team Lad McConkey and Brock Bowers and then, let one of the other guys try to beat you. It's kind of that old adage, like, we're gonna let certain people get theirs and then we'll just make one of the other guys have to beat us. Like, I need to see, Lovett or Rosemead, Jack Saint, like any of those guys, Ra Thomas, one of those guys, force one of them to really step up and have a big game in there. If I'm Tennessee, I think Tennessee's going to keep this game close. I think this is going to be very similar to 2 years ago. Tennessee kept that game close up through the second quarter, and then third quarter, Georgia just blew it wide open. I want to say Georgia just absolutely put the boots to them and just blew that game wide open once you hit the third quarter. I think that's something that's very, very similar in this situation. Yeah, actually, I'm sorry, it's the second quarter. And the second quarter, Georgia just started pouring it on. I think it's going to be third quarter where you see Georgia really open it up. But if Tennessee wants to have any chance whatsoever in this football game, they have to run the football, and they got to stop making penalties. Go back to the Alabama game 2 years ago. Knoxville was loud. It was rambunctious. Georgia has 44 penalties on the season. Tennessee has 82 or 83 or something like that. 80 plus penalties. That's where, though, if you look at that Alabama game, Alabama committed 17 penalties in those games. And again, Alabama, you're going to say, oh, the refs gave you. They didn't give you 17 penalties. That was an undisciplined game. So if Georgia's going to lose this football game, it's going to be because the crowd noise gets to them. Tennessee is able to run the football on them. And Josh Heupel calls the most amazing game of his career, and Tim Banks calls an amazing defensive game plan there. I don't see that happening. I got Georgia winning. I got Georgia by 9 in this game. I think the spread right now is 10.5. I'm always nervous to take double. I would stay away from this football game. I don't like taking double-digit road favorites in this. So I kind of would stay away with it. But like I said, Georgia's going to pull away second half in this football game. Close in the first half. I think it's going to be back and forth in the first half. But you'll see the difference between these two programs where they're at currently in this. But you're right, Fresh. Heupel wins this football game. You can really hang your hat on that type of W, and really walk around and puff your chest out. And I think it becomes very interesting going into next season because I don't think Tennessee plays Georgia next year.
No, they don't.
So this could be one of those things that really springboards you into next season. So
Well, that's kind of what you have to be focused when you come to the football game. We talked about earlier. You can't let any opportunity, you can't overlook anybody. You've got to be disciplined to address it because it could be a season a ruiner if you don't play and don't take it seriously or don't come out playing immediately.
right, but like I said, Fresh, I got Georgia winning second half though, big time on that one. All right,
Just
Fresh.
win, baby.